everybody. Welcome to another episode of Talking Heartland. We are finishing up season 6. This is so exciting. We're almost halfway done. The series.
Crazy.
Crazy. So, very exciting. Today we're talking about season 6, episode 16, 17, 18 of Heartland. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner. Michelle is here. How are you doing?
Hey everyone. Apologies in advance. I'm a little bit sick. So if I cough or clear my throat all the way through this, I'm so sorry. It's probably not pleasant to listen to, but yeah, I'll do my best to hold it together.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're just glad that you don't have COVID. All's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you believe it? We made it through season 6.
Unbelievable.
That's right.
It's crazy. We've been doing this for maybe like a year now, like over a year.
I think was it August? I think that we started,
Okay.
or maybe earlier. I'd have to check that. But yeah, it's been close to a year, and it's been a good year. I've enjoyed it very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been a good show.
don't know if I don't know if I'd been able to like get through as many episodes on my own because I don't know, some reason like this show I tend to just sort of dipped in and out over the
Mhm,
years, and I never
right.
got past like I think season 2 or something. Just because I was like it'll always be there.
Right. Well, it's hard for me to find the time for television just because it's especially a show, it's just so intimidating. It's kind of similar to Doctor Who. It's
Yeah,
just like there's so many episodes, and how do you even start?
yeah. I just started with the new Who. I've never
Uh-huh.
watched anything older than that. I've always
Right.
just kind of stuck to, and even like if there's a Doctor that I don't like, I just don't watch that and just go straight to the next one.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just these long running shows. It's like if you were to start watching Grey's Anatomy, I mean, it's just overwhelming. Where do you
Yeah,
begin?
yeah. I started doing a Star Trek Voyager, so that's
Oh
my
yeah.
favorite of the franchise. I
Uh-huh.
started doing I think this is maybe my third rewatch. And I started that rewatch maybe like 2 years ago because the seasons are so long. It's like 27 episodes or 25 episodes in the first season. It's so crazy. I'm like, they must
Yeah.
have just been filming constantly.
Yeah, I and there's yeah, that's another one that's intimidating to begin. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. So I understand that very much. And Heartland is definitely no exception. And we did find out that Heartland is going to be airing season 14 on Up TV coming up this month. So people that have been waiting for that for US release, that is happening. And hopefully we're going to get some coverage and some fun stuff. So obviously we're way behind when it comes to the
Yeah.
show. Nevertheless, uh, our listeners will be excited about that. It's actually going to begin airing on July 8th. So it'll be right when this episode is airing. So
I know that in the UK they
yeah,
just added
exactly.
season 14 to Netflix in the past couple of
Okay.
weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know about the rest of Europe, but in the
Yeah.
UK it sort of
And
popped up.
from what I've heard, bring your tissues.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
I've
I've
just
tried
heard
to
the rumor mill is strong.
yeah, yeah. I've tried to avoid things, but it's impossible.
No. Yeah. So you just enjoy it. It doesn't matter. Uh,
Yeah.
if you let a spoiler ruin a show, then it's not really that great of a show, in my opinion.
Bother watching
Uh,
TV.
all right. Well, let's dive into these episodes. So it's episode 16, Born to Buck. This episode, Amy is having trouble dealing with a roping horse that only wants to buck, and Caleb, who isn't sure he wants to ride broncs anymore. And meanwhile, when Shane shows up at Heartland for a surprise visit, Tim and Miranda are forced to decide where their secret relationship is really headed. And Ty gently pushes Jack to consider accepting a cool job offer that could land him right back in the excitement of the rodeo scene. So, what were your overall thoughts about this episode?
I wasn't crazy about this episode.
Hmm.
I wasn't a fan of Caleb and Lou thing because it just felt like it was complete. The whole thing was completely pointless. It just
Hmm.
felt like it went nowhere. And I was sort of confused about the Jack thing because it felt like, okay, it's taking him back to the rodeo, but it's sort of a part of the job that didn't really seem like that was Jack. You know, he was sort of dealing with paperwork and phone calls, and that just doesn't seem like what I was envisioning for the job. Um, and yeah, the Tim stuff just drove me crazy. Like
Yeah.
he's the worst. He's he's the worst.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and I don't understand why they went this way with Tim and Miranda. Did they actually think that we're like super invested in this relationship?
I have no
Uh,
idea. It's hard to like imagine because we are so like far back. Like it's
mhm,
hard to imagine what the reaction was at the time.
right.
I can't imagine people being into this relationship. Like he's so hard to root for because it
Yeah.
feels like one step forward, three back constantly with him. Like he's so arrogant and like rude.
Yeah.
And he's like whenever something kind of goes wrong, like he'll, you know, be really funny in scenes like here and there, sort of sprinkled throughout. But then
Mhm.
he just does something like an offhanded comment or it just sort of slips back into like bad behavior or sort of things that just come across as really selfish and it just I lose
Yeah.
all sort of respect that that I
Yeah.
was starting to feel for him.
Yeah, I agree. He has some interesting scenes with his daughters or with Shane maybe, and then any goodwill that that provides is ruined
Yeah,
by or even some scenes with Jack, he can be pretty fun, you know, their dynamic can be
Caleb.
interesting. Yeah, and then you like I didn't mind the episode where he was running for Cowboy Association president. Like that was a pretty good episode for Tim.
Yeah,
But the whole anytime that he is dealing with romance, it is just fallen so flat. They've never been able to get anybody that has any chemistry, and he's just so icky
yeah.
around
I mean
women.
that's yeah. I mean one of my favorite like tropes about like romance on TV is sort of the not so necessarily the bad guy, but like the guy that you're not really rooting for. Or I'm trying to think of like an example, and I'm completely lost. Like One Tree Hill, like Nathan and Haley on One Tree Hill. Like Nathan was the worst. He was sort of like this teenage, like he would only go after cheerleaders. He was very selfish, and by the end of the show, you maybe halfway through the show, like completely unrecognizable. Whereas this
Hmm.
just feels like you're not really getting the growth
Hmm.
with him.
Right.
And maybe it's that he's like a fully formed adult when we met him, but you know, maybe
Mhm.
has lived a whole life. But yeah, it just feels like the same thing over
Like,
and
how
over.
would he feel if somebody treated his daughters the way that he treats women, the way he treated Janice, the way he is treating Miranda, and there's no motivation for Miranda to be with him except for a past history and a shared child. But just as
Yeah,
far as like he seems like he would be not a fun person to be around, not a fun person to be with or inspiring or uplifting or, just like, why would
yeah,
you want to be with this guy? I have no idea.
and it's interesting because this episode sort of hinted at something that I think would have really worked to get us on his side in terms of like him being sort of still carrying around, you know, trauma or heartbreak from his relationship with his wife, with
Mm.
Marion. You know, that exploring that would maybe help, but the fact that it doesn't really go anywhere, it doesn't really get
Yeah.
sort of digged into and explored. That would have been really helpful in sort of helping us understand what he wants because that's something that I'm missing. What I don't know what he wants out of a relationship. Like, is he just going to be like nothing serious, acting like a
Yeah.
teenager in terms of relationships his whole life?
Hmm. Yeah, I find that a little bit hard in the show that the two main male characters are so reticent for, well, two of the main, because Ty would be the third, I guess, but that are
Yeah,
so reticent to form a relationship. Like, I don't know, I think that story arc is more believable when you're younger, and then when
yeah,
you're older, it's like, come on, what are you waiting for? Like,
yeah.
you're that shy of commitment. But I guess
Mhm.
maybe it makes sense because they've been burned before. So, but I don't know. I just feel like that. I guess it makes more sense to me when you're younger because you're still figuring out who you are and your opinions and your in what you want, versus when you're older. I feel like you should know what you want, you should know who you are, and so you
Yeah,
should be more ready to make a commitment.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
and
know
it's
for
even
me, I
hard.
mean, I'm 40, and so if it comes, if I get into a relationship, like, it's not going to be, I'm going to be ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so hard because I love the actor and he's so great in other things.
Hmm.
It just feels really, really, really frustrating that I can't get on board with Tim.
Yeah.
Anytime it feels like I'm getting sort of something, it sort of backslides.
Yeah, I especially was irritated with him when he says to Miranda, he says, "You've been tarting it up." Like, what
Oh,
are
that was
you,
ridiculous.
13? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Can you imagine if like Ty said that to
Oh
Amy?
my gosh.
Reaction would be?
Like, it's so misogynistic. It's terrible. You can't say that to a woman.
Yeah, and I think that's, a characteristic that is definitely there that I could do without is this misogyny.
Yeah. Hmm. Uh, so then we have Lou walking in on Tim and Miranda.
Ugh, gross. I
That's
felt so bad for
gross.
her.
I know. They need better locks on these dude ranch cabins, I think. This is not the first time this has happened. Yeah, so there's this whole thing between Caleb and Lou, and Ty tells Caleb the longer you stay away, the weirder things will get. I did like the whole thing with Caleb trying to figure out what to do, and it's like he's gonna become a mall cop. That made me laugh.
Yeah, yeah. I did like about this in terms of like what is he realistically going to do with his life because he can't stay on the rodeo forever. Ultimately he's younger people will come up and he's at risk of injury pretty
Yeah.
much every step of the way. So yeah, I did like that they kind of started having that conversation.
It's too bad that he can't do the job that Jack is gonna end up doing. That seems like perfect fit
Yeah,
for
yeah, that's
Caleb.
actually what I thought was going to happen. Like when he started
Mhm.
having a conversation with the guy that offered Jack the job,
Yeah.
that's how I thought the episode would end.
Hmm. Because there's Rich. His name is Rich. He's running bronc riding competitions. He wants somebody to run the Canadian competitions. So he asks Jack, and uh, then that's something that Jack has to consider. But everybody's pretty supportive about it, and yeah, it seems like he's so busy as it is running the ranch.
Yeah, because he's always like he always gives Caleb his job back because he's always shorthand and he can't do everything by himself. So yeah, the idea that he's going to take another job is kind of crazy, especially
Yeah,
one that's he's on the road constantly.
right. Yeah, I do you think that they originally intended this to be shot in the summer? Because I don't understand why Georgie is at camp in the middle of winter.
Yeah, that would be really unpleasant.
That was weird. Like, you have school and stuff. Like, what? Who goes to camp in the winter? I never heard
Even think about that, but yeah.
that. Uh, but it was very cute how excited Jack was for the recordings from
It's
Georgie.
so sweet.
That was so cute. That just how attached Jack is to Georgie is super, super cute.
Yeah, I love it.
Mhm.
And I didn't actually expect her to be in this episode. I thought she was going to be gone. So yeah, I loved it. Her first thing she did was see Jack when she came back.
Yeah, it was really cute. And you have this uh, bucking horse. I think it was named Denver. I think it was the name of the horse.
Yeah, Denver.
Yeah. And Amy's trying to help it so that it can be a roping horse. But sort of the whole message of this episode is that it was born to buck. And Caleb sees it, and uh, he's uh, he's tempted to kind of get back in, and he talks to Rich, and that maybe this horse is meant to be a rodeo horse, and he says he's going to buy it, and Tim wants to help him buy it, and so that. Yeah, so then Shane shows up, and this is now the is it the third time? He's now run away from home.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like the third or fourth time that he's done this.
they should just get him a bus pass at this point.
See where he is.
Yeah, because he does this so much. And Miranda's upset, and you have conversations between Miranda and Lou and Miranda and Jack. That's interesting, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to be invested in that relationship. I like Shane as a character. I wish that we could get more from him than just complaining about him and Miranda. Like get more of an arc just from him.
Yeah, considering it's like a family show, it would be fun if they just invested in like the father-son relationship instead of this romance that sort of came out of nowhere. It feels like it was more a thing of convenience. It just felt kind of strange. It's
Mm-hmm.
like Tim can't be friends with women.
Yeah.
It's like yeah,
Yeah, and I just thought it was so ridiculous that Tim is upset with Jack for having a conversation with Miranda. And I, I mean, I guess he blames them for the breakup, but that's just so ridiculous because he's just so not self-aware as a character at all of like his behavior and what might have the idea that Jack is to blame for this is ridiculous.
yeah. And Jack was like really kind in what he said to Miranda.
Right.
It's not like he was, telling her that, you know, she shouldn't be in a relationship with him. That no, he was actually, trying to
Yeah.
give her some context as to why he was behaving the way he was.
Hmm. Yeah. One thing I don't understand so far in the show, and maybe I missed something, but where are Amy and Ty in their relationship? Have they consummated their relationship, to your knowledge?
They haven't in the show mentioned it.
I don't.
Um,
Yeah, they haven't like
they
on the
haven't mentioned
show,
it. Yeah, they haven't mentioned it. Um, it just seems to be something they don't talk about on the show.
which is
Um,
weird. Like, I mean,
a
you'd think that
conversation.
you think that would be kind of a big deal and something they would, want to talk about
I,
or make
yeah,
part of the story.
I know it's not necessarily a teen show, but it is a teen relationship, and pretty much every single teen show or teen relationship I've seen on TV, that's like maybe the second conversation that comes up.
Right.
Like it's there's an episode dedicated to it. Like there's
Right.
always yeah. It just seems weird
Like
that
it's a big deal in a relationship. Either deciding to wait is a big deal, or deciding
yeah. I mean,
to do it is a big
like
deal. Like either way.
yeah, I feel like if they had just had Amy say that she wants to wait until she's married or she wants to wait
Yeah.
until however long, or that she just wants to wait, we wouldn't have these questions. But it seems strange. Like, this is on CBC, right?
Yeah.
TV show. I think that's the same network that Degrassi was on, and Degrassi covered
Hmm.
everything,
Right.
like
Yeah.
everything.
It's just so weird because they have a scene in this episode where Lou says, "Get a room," and it's like, what?
Yeah.
You would never say, at least I don't think you would ever say that to your sibling, your
Guess they're
teenage
both,
sibling.
yeah. I mean, I guess she's 18 and he's 19. So like,
Get a room? I mean, come on.
yeah,
I don't think you would ever say that.
yeah.
So that just made me think like, what is going on? And then later on, we have another episode, we have the going to Vegas thing, and I'm like, what's happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
They skipped a part.
I feel like we're just gonna like see them get married and then like they'll be get an episode later and they'll just be like fully clothed in bed together and that'll be like 50 TV.
Like we skipped a part. We skipped a part. So uh and yeah, and then so Georgie comes back at the end, and Miranda leaves. And then Jack leaves on he decides to take the job after all. So what would you give this episode 1 to 10?
Like a 6. I wasn't the biggest fan of this one,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, I think that's fair. Six, 4 points lost for Tim on this
it's
one.
probably like rated like 9.5 on IMDb or something.
Oh, let me check. It's they all are, I think, 8.6 on IMDb. This one. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies Podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
So the next episode is called Breaking Point. And this is Amy and Lou help Georgie regain her confidence as a show jumper when Olivia makes her question her place in the family. Meanwhile, one of Stumpy's cattle is found dead, and the possibility of mad cow disease has Jack and Tim very concerned about their own herd. And Lou finds something that makes her wonder exactly what kind of tacky wedding Amy and Ty are planning without her input. So overall, what do you think of this episode?
Yeah, I thought this was, a bit of a step up. It felt like it was definitely just sort of filling the gap before the finale. It just sort of setting things up for the finale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked, that Tim Razon was in the episode, and I thought the Georgia stuff again was pretty good. And yeah, that the whole mad cow disease thing, like, that just gave me flashbacks of like seeing that on the news constantly when I was a kid.
Yeah, especially over there in the UK.
Mhm.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
it was like pretty much lived that every single day for a long period of time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's more of Tim being the worst. He's in this business relationship with Jack, and he wants to serve the cows the cheaper feed that comes from
Mhm.
Stumpy, and Jack says no, and he does it anyway, and it
Yeah.
turns out to uh that they were worried that it might be this mad cow disease. And when you're working with somebody else, you have to work with that person. Like, even if he disagrees, then you have to come up with some kind of compromise, or and that's just not how you run a business together.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
And
amazing that Jack has lasted as long as he did.
I know. I'm like, it was probably a pretty bad idea to begin with, but I think he feels like he kind of has to because of the family connection.
Hmm. Yeah.
And he finally reaches to use the name of the episode, The Breaking Point, with Tim.
Yeah.
And I think we all agree with Jack.
Yeah. I think we've reached our breaking point with Tim as
Yeah.
well quite a few times this season.
Yes. And then we also have Georgie that is riding Phoenix, but she starts to lose her confidence with the jumping because Olivia is being the worst. And she's taunting her and saying she's not going to get adopted and things like that.
Yeah. This is a really, really mean little girl.
Yeah, she really is. It's very true.
Like making fun of her clothes or her hair or anything like that is you're not getting adopted. Like it's so mean.
Yeah. That why you would, I mean, I guess she's trying to be competitive, but uh, there's so few. It seems to be other little kids. You think that she would want to be like friendly with
Yeah.
another person who's a racer like her, or jumper, I should say.
Yeah.
So we meet Eric, and Eric is uh there's Kendra who, right? Kendra?
Yeah. Yeah, Kendra.
Yes. Yeah, so Kendra had given Heartland Phoenix because she couldn't take care of him and they were overrun, and we'd seen that previously.
Mhm.
And they never gotten an actual bill of sale. It was just a applied contract.
Mhm.
And but Eric knows it as sky's the limit, not Phoenix. But Ty figures it out and tells him that Phoenix is at Heartland. And at first he's like super cool and he's just like, "Oh, that's great. I'm glad that you have the horse." And then it turns out that he realizes that it's worth like 40K. So he all of a sudden wants the horse. I don't know. What do you think of this whole plot?
It's frustrating. Obviously I really like the actor, so it was nice seeing him
Uh-huh.
give it a little bit of a leeway in terms of that. But this you would think Amy would get something in writing after
Right.
everything we went through with Spartan. Like it's so crazy to me that she would ever like take a word of mouth thing in like with a horse.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it would just be general rule of of feeding and keeping and taking everything the horse. Like you need that bill of sale, I would think.
Yeah, and I believe the one of the ways she got Spartan was she was going to charge for like room and board and all of the like medical things that Spartan had needed over the years. So like, why didn't they do the same with this? Why
Yeah,
didn't
I
they
wondered
just
about
say
that.
we'll charge you for keeping them and looking after them all this time?
I mean, I guess in the end, as we in the next episode, they did they ended up selling it for a pretty like it was 25K. So I guess that could be considered. But yeah, in this whole conversation in this episode, you'd think that would at least get brought up.
Yeah, exactly.
hmm And then we have Georgie overhears Peter and Lou fighting on the phone. Lou's on the phone, and she says, "Well, Georgie is such a handful, and are we going to be able to go through the adoption?" And so Georgie gets very upset
Mm.
and storms out. And I feel like Lou says that she was just trying to make Peter feel badly, but I feel like that's pretty harsh, saying you don't
Yeah,
want to adopt, we're going to adopt. I feel like you wouldn't say that.
yeah,
I can understand
yep.
the handful thing.
Hmm.
That was more believable, but the adoption thing, that's
Yeah,
pretty harsh.
yeah, and maybe it was just something the writers had to come up with in terms of like to get Georgie to this place, but that she gets in this episode. But Yeah, I agree. It seemed
Mhm.
kind of like a low blow in terms of. I mean, they argue constantly, but
Yeah.
that
More
seemed to kind
Peter
of.
and Lou. And then you uh, have Lou telling Georgie that she needs to say, I'm part of this family over and over again. And then everybody comes out to watch her jump. That was very sweet. I liked that.
Yeah, yeah, that was really cute.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, we saw Eric lurking in the background.
Yeah. Uh, so then, uh, then we have this fight between Tim and Jack, and Jack basically says everything will be gone if there is BSE, which is the mad cow disease.
Mhm.
Everything, Harlan's gone, everything, the whole. So that was a this whole scene was very intense.
Yeah,
And when Tim punches Jack in the stomach, that was probably the lowest moment on the whole show, I think.
yeah, it felt like this was a scene from a different show. Like
Hmm.
it just got really dark and really violent. I mean, I watch like everything, but in
Right.
terms of like this show, it seemed really violent.
Yeah, it was, no doubt. And uh it it was it it almost you think, boy, is they cross a line here where he's just not redeemable as a character.
I
I
hope
know,
not
pretty
because he's
close.
like, and oh, he's still in the show. I hope not.
He's
Um, um, yeah, it just seemed so bizarre. Um, God, I
yeah.
had a complete
But
brain fart there. I was going to say
because
something,
well
it's gone.
well, it's just like it he expects just because it's not BSC that everything's going to be resolved, but he still punched Jack in the stomach, so that's not the
Yeah,
case.
yeah, yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like we've seen them fight before, but them fighting is like teenagers or like boys wrestling. It's not this sort of crossing the line into like them actually physically fighting and hurting each other,
Hmm. Yeah,
which is what happened in this one. But yeah,
exactly. And we did get a very sweet ending with Lou putting Georgie's parents' photo up with all the family photos. That was very sweet. I like that.
yeah, yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
I
it
just
was
wish Peter was here to like really feel like they are becoming a family.
hmm. Yeah, that would have been nice. That's true. So what would you give this one 1 to 10?
Oh, maybe like a 7.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree. All right. Last episode, it's called Under Pressure. And this episode, the summary is with the threat of losing Phoenix looming over their heads, things become even more complicated at Heartland when Georgie gets a surprise visit from her brother Jeff. When Jeff reveals the real reason for his visit, the family is faced with the possibility of losing Georgie as well. With all the drama at home, Amy has second thoughts about going on a road trip to Las Vegas with Ty. Meanwhile, Peter suggests a life changing idea to Lou that she finds impossible to wrap her head around, and an increasingly stressed out and overworked Jack ends his partnership with Tim. So, what did you think overall for this season finale?
I'm not sure how I think of it in terms of a season finale, but just as an episode on its own, like there was a few storylines, like the Jeff storyline, the gosh,
The
the Amy and
Jack?
Ty, the Amy and Ty storyline. Like I sort of assumed where they were going to go, and they did surprise me, which was yeah, I definitely give the episode credit for that. And I thought that the ending was like really sad, but really strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a good episode. I still think it's a little weird that so Ty and Amy are debating about going on this trip to Vegas.
Mhm.
And you have this whole thing with Ty saying that she's used to thinking of her family as her family, where him and her are the new family group, like the new commitment. That's the priority over whatever drama's going on at home. And that would be fine, except for the fact that I'm just confused about where their relationship is. Like if they were married, then yeah, I agree. Then the priority needs to be to the two of them. That's the new family group. But they're
Mhm.
engaged, and
They're
yet I
engaged
don't
and
know.
he's in college. Like, and
So
her business is at Heartland. It's not like it's just her home.
right, yeah, exactly.
And they're
So
going to Vegas for her. I mean, she's going to do like a clinic, so she's
right,
going there to work. So it's not like he's wanting to go to Vegas and she's hesitant. I think if anybody's like making a decision, it would be her because she's the reason that they're going. I guess he's just sort of seen it as like
yeah,
road trip.
yeah. Because if they are waiting until marriage,
Mm.
then
No, in terms of like
they're going
when are
on
they
this
going to,
like
when are they getting married? Are they planning getting married anytime soon?
yeah, and they're going on this romantic. It seems a little risky. I mean, if you don't want to be, if you're waiting until marriage, you don't want to put yourself in situations where you're going to be tempted
Yeah,
to and going on a romantic weekend
to Vegas.
or trip to Vegas with like honeymoon suites and stuff like that seems risky.
Yeah, yeah,
If you uh if that's your goal. If it's not your goal, and I don't know if it is or isn't, they haven't told us. Then if it's not their goal, then what are they waiting for?
yeah.
I
It's
don't
so
know.
weird that they just haven't had a conversation yet. It's
Hmm.
so strange.
Yeah, you would at least talk about it
Yeah.
of like, okay, we want to wait until marriage, and so we're gonna have chaperones with us. We're gonna be careful. Like all that stuff needs to happen because you're attracted to each other. That's why you want to get married, or
Hmm.
certainly one of the reasons. So I don't know. It's weird. Uh,
Yeah, and even just having like the conversation, it takes it off the table, so us as viewers aren't constantly at every sort of milestone in a relationship. We're not asking the question. Um, so if it would be helpful if they would just drop in a few lines of like, tell us where you are.
yeah, exactly. And so then you have Lou very excited about planning Georgie's birthday. And I thought that Peter was such a butt in this episode. He was really just kind of the worst. Like she was happy, she was excited to see him, she was
Hmm.
excited about the party. And he comes in, the very first thing he says is, "This is what you do. Throw yourself in these crazy events and forget what matters." I thought that was very harsh. And like,
Yeah,
I don't know, I just feel like somebody that's trying to make this all work, you wouldn't lead with that. You
yeah.
lead with, "Oh, I'm so glad you're excited," or whatever, and then maybe
Or
like two conversations down, you might say that. But this is the thing you do. Oh, how dare she plan a birthday party for her daughter? I mean,
and why isn't he excited?
yeah,
It's his daughter too. Like,
right.
it's just through the door after being away, and they're already like, he's already like I don't understand his mentality. Does he think that her life just stops until he comes back?
It was literally the first thing he said.
Yeah.
He came in the door, gave her a
Hmm.
hug, and then, "Oh, this is the thing you do." I'm like, what? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, I hated it. That was harsh, very
Yeah.
harsh. And so he's gotten a promotion and a raise, and he wants to move to Vancouver, which is totally valid and makes sense.
Yep.
But you're taking the cowgirl away from the ranch. Like she just doesn't want to move, and so and she tried it, and that's what she says, is that she tried going to Dubai. She tried doing that. It just
Hmm.
didn't work for her.
Yeah. And I understand that Vancouver is different from Dubai.
Hmm.
She's not as far away from home, but at the end of the day, she wants to be home. And I
Yeah.
feel like this is something that they really should have, like, I mean, I guess they can't, because I was going to say they should have talked about that before they got married, but she was going to Dubai, so
It's a shame
for
because
all intents.
I liked stay at home dad Peter. That
Yeah,
was
me
by
too.
far the best version of Peter, and I
Yeah,
wish they had just kept him that way.
yeah.
It it
Uh-huh.
it was good. It worked, and I liked his interactions with Katie, and I liked him working with Caleb and Jack, and it was
Hmm.
just I guess they just couldn't have him in that many scenes or something, but just this whole of like why he would basically sacrifice his family for some corporate job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like it's even
Hmm.
I don't know, going out on the rodeo circuit or something like which is more like a dream kind of thing, like, to be a suit, he's given up, like, his whole family. It just doesn't I don't know. I don't like it.
Have you ever watched the TV show Parenthood?
I did, yeah, I did.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
one of like my favorite on rewatch, not when I was first watching it, but on rewatch, one of the storylines that I always really appreciated was the Joel storyline of him being
Mm,
a stay-at-home dad, um, and Julia being the one that goes out and works.
yep,
And the family dynamic was interesting because the men in the family sort of looked down on him a little bit, but he was really successful in his job before he decided to stay at home, and it was just so fun and different to see him doing all the stay at home dad things, like going to like sports things and like getting the kid ready and like
yeah,
really having a bond with the child that's different from the mother, because it just was so interesting, and it's
yeah,
just kind of disappointing that they could have had something similar with Peter, but
yeah.
instead we've sort of gone back to this.
Yeah, and he was so rude in this episode saying, "You live in your fairy tale world." I'm like, "A fairy tale world?" She, like, wants her
She wants
husband
a
to
very
be
simple life to be
yeah, I mean,
like,
it just doesn't seem that ridiculous to me to have a birthday party for her daughter.
which is going to be his daughter. Like, I don't understand. I was excited. That's the reason he came home.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's frustrating. So then you have Jack and Tim. The it starts Tim. Uh, he wants to buy Tim out, but Tim's like, "Oh, it's no big deal," and he's like, "It was a big deal." And then you have uh, then you have him at the end saying, "Well, why don't you buy me out?" And he's still very, very angry. But then Tim says, "I'm going to sell Big River and move to Moose Jaw, closer to Shane." I don't think that really would be that big of a deal because you're still within driving distance to Heartland. You still could see each other quite a bit. But there was the wrong timing for him to tell Lou right when she's putting together the birthday party and dealing with everything else.
Yeah, and it was just sort of his response of like feeling like he's kind of left out, but he's not. It's
Hmm.
just that he doesn't live in the house. He's sort of like, well, why didn't I know these things? And it's like, well, because they just happened and you weren't here.
Yeah. So we have Eric is asking 40K for Phoenix, and then he takes Phoenix away, and that was devastating.
And that was brutal.
Georgie. Oh, oh,
It reminds me of that scene in, oh god, what was that movie with Sandra Bullock?
hope
Oh my,
floats.
oh my god,
Oh,
yeah, hopefully when
oh,
the little girl's running after the car with her dad.
yeah, yes. So then we have Jeff, Georgie's brother, in town,
Mm.
and he's making the big money all of a sudden. I forget
This was
what
so
he said
funny.
he does.
Yeah,
What does he do?
I
Can't
think it was
remember.
some. Yeah, I think he mentioned oil, or yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
that was
something.
just
Oh,
them. Yeah, but this was so interesting that like the second he started talking, I was like, oh, he's like full of it. There's no, there's no way he has an apartment. There's no way he has money. Yeah, but it's really interesting the way they just sort of flipped it.
yeah. I know. They needed somebody to be there to pay for Phoenix and come up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like I mean, I don't know about the foster care system, but I feel like just because you're related,
Hmm.
especially a sibling relationship, I don't feel like it would be that easy for him to take Georgie. I feel like it would be a little harder.
Yeah, I feel like he would have to sort of jump through all the hoops
Yeah.
that Lou and Peter are having to. But maybe he's just got priority. Maybe he's just like kind of above them in terms of
Like a
what's best for
little bit of
Georgia.
party, but I feel like it would be harder.
Yeah, yeah, it should be harder,
Yeah.
especially considering that he's out working. Where's Georgie going to go when she
Yeah.
finishes school? Like, Lou was asking all of those questions, and he didn't have an answer for them. And it feels like
Right.
Clint should maybe be the one with those questions.
Yeah. Exactly. And especially with somebody so young as he is.
I think
Uh,
what is he, 19, something like
yeah,
that.
something like that. He is very young.
Hmm.
So that, yeah, I guess you have to just go with it to believe it, but it definitely creates the conflict.
Hmm.
And at first, Georgie's says, "Well, I don't want to abandon him. I'm all he has." So she's kind of doing it to help him. And Lou says, "I won't let this happen without a fight." And Jeff is going to give Georgie a fancy necklace that he got. And we also get Jack getting a letter from Lisa saying that I miss you, Jack. It was cute.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
was sort of nervous what was going to be in that letter. Um, but yeah, maybe they just didn't have the actress
yeah, I
at the
kind
end
of
of the
wondered about
season. I
that.
feel like maybe she was doing a movie or something.
Right. Yeah. And so then Ty and Amy decide to go on their trip. And Jeff has 25K that he can pay for Phoenix and the necklace. And at first I was concerned because I thought that this was the last episode for Mallory as a regular cast member, but turns out she's I think 4 episodes of next season. So I think she gets her final send off in episode 4 of season 7. So because I was like, that's kind of lame for her to just all she gets in her final episode is like, pouring coffee. It's not very
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
But it turns out that it's more. And so that was this episode. And I think all of the Georgie stuff really worked. That's been a huge win this season. I think she was a great add to this season.
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. I think
Mhm.
the Georgie and Jack stuff is the strongest thing of the season,
Agreed. Yeah.
and it started
But
off really strong and had some really great episodes in the middle of the season.
yeah. And the Peter stuff is my least favorite. Well, and
Yeah,
Tim. And
and
Tim.
Tim, can't forget Tim.
No. So I'd give this, I think I'd give this an 8.
Yeah, yeah, I'd maybe go 8.5. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, very good. Well, let us know if you're listening what you think and where you would rank these 3 episodes, what rating you would give them. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And if you're excited about season 14, and it's going to be airing on Up, let us know about that as well. We'd love to hear what you're feeling. And Michelle, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Michelle R. Benson.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. And make sure you're following the podcast to Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group, which is a lot of fun, and our merch store, which has Heartland inspired merch. Check it out over there. We would really appreciate it. So thanks so much, everybody. And we'll be on to season 7. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.